All right, chat, I am over 30 hours into Wuthering Waves at this point. I've had a lot of gameplay. I've fought all of the bosses, and I've been dipping my toes into the hologram tower, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the co-op in Wuthering Waves, and I want to talk a little bit of the things it does well, some things that need a little bit of work, and then where I hope to see it go in the future. Let's talk about it. Subscribe! Now, I'm currently just hanging out in the city with Calcharo, my boy, right now. Got him from the 5-star selector because you know, of course, we were going to be picking Calcharo from that selector with Yinlin coming in the future. It's going to be fantastic. But we're talking about co-op right now. And so here's the thing. I found I was doing a lot of co-op with my viewers. We were running around and we were exploring the open world, doing a little bit of echo farming. And I think that as of right now is where co-op starts to shine the most, where you're not dealing with anything hyper competitive, where you're able to just explore the world together, farm echoes and do that. And the reason why I think that's where it works really well is because if you didn't know, drops are individually set in Wuthering Waves, which means if you're going through and you fight a boss, for example, you all get together to fight the Impermanence Heron, for example, you get individual drops. So if you miss an echo and you don't happen to get a drop, somebody else can, or if you get an echo drop, nobody else can take it from you. It is localized to your account and will drop according to you, which is great. I think that is a perfect thing that they have added in there, and I'm so glad they've done it that way and not any other way, or else it would have been super annoying if you couldn't actually both benefit, or the three of you benefit from farming. I was able to do it with 2 additional viewers, and while we were there, everybody was getting data bank level as we were farming them. It's a perfect combination. And when it's casual and you're just exploring and you're not hoping for anything hyper competitive, it balances well. But where it actually starts to get a little bit difficult is actually I found the co-op in a boss mode or when fighting some of the elites actually to be a little bit of a hindrance in some cases, as opposed to helping. Now, if you're wanting to go into the world and you're wanting to fight the various enemies in the world or the bosses in the world, for example, and you're doing the hyper competitive content and you're not hoping to be carried in that case, then it's kind of hard to have any kind of coordinated ability. If you're under leveled and you're going in and you just want your over leveled friend to come in and clear those elites for you, then of course co-op is going to be a benefit to you. But if you want to come in and you want to fight together, I find it's really hard to coordinate. And when you're just fighting the Tempest Mephis or one of the other bosses available, you end up all 3 of you just clustered on top of the boss and just all wildly swinging and hoping for the best. And honestly, it usually works. Out of the 3 of you, probably one of you is going to hit the parry on that boss and it's just going to be beat down and it's going to die. And well, look, it's maybe efficient at killing the boss a little bit faster because the bosses don't seem to scale their HP based on being on co-op. It still isn't necessarily an optimal combat experience. One area where actually I found it to be really difficult was in co-op when we were trying to kill some of the elite bosses. When we were fighting some of those spectral rocks of the different elements, it's really hard to read where the attacks are going to go and where they're going to hit. And in that case, I find I wasn't able to dodge accordingly or prepare accordingly because I didn't know where the attack was going to go. I couldn't actually get a read on it. The same thing started to happen with the twin herons when we were trying to fight those together. I found the optimal way to do that combat together was actually to have 2 of them go and lure one of the other herons away and stall them, where I managed to solo the first heron before going over, and then the 3 of us finally taking down the second heron. It's not super optimal to do those fights in that way, and I think that's an area where I'd like to see some improvement, but to be honest, I don't know if there is. I think just in the open world, you're not going to get an optimal boss experience through co-op. You're just going to have the optimal experience of basically being able to use it as an excuse for just chatting with your friends while all progressing your account at the same time, which is good. To be honest, I think it's one area where Genshin kind of fell short. There was no way for everybody to progress on their account when you did co-op in Genshin, and also co-op came later. So there was like no real like cross benefit to co-op other than, look, we're in each other's world. This at least has some value, especially when you consider you can can go to your friend's world after the fact and you can farm their echoes too. So everybody actually gets double the chance or triple the chance to get those echoes if you're trying to be hyper efficient with it. I know most people aren't going to do that. So that's why it's just a good opportunity to hang out, flex your characters, and have a little bit of fun with it. But where I would like to see it go, I think this co-op has an opportunity to do something even bigger and better. Now, this is something I've said previously in conversation, and it's something else that I've talked a lot about with some other content creators at different times. And what I would like to see is almost like a raid-like game mode. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a full-blown dungeon, you know, full of multi-stages, but I would like to see some kind of boss be brought in that does require co-op, or as it is at least greatly made more efficient through co-op, where, you know, you want to have everybody come in as a different elemental type or different role, or there are certain boss mechanics that, you know, need players to be at different positions in the map while fighting the boss to make the boss vulnerable. Something along those lines. A mechanic that isn't just everybody crowds together and just smashes the boss at once and we all hope for the best. One that requires some degree of positioning and complexity to the combat. Because I think the way that this combat is designed, if we could have that, could be really good. And now maybe, if we're kind of spitballing here, maybe it's something to do with where a boss has certain phases where, you know, maybe you are all just attacking the boss together, but then it's split up into, you know, 3 different mobs form, and you can all split up to each take down your own mob, and by clearing those mobs, the boss respawns back in. Something, anywhere, that gives some degree of mechanic to the boss fight that's not simply just everybody slap the boss as hard as you can. This game excels when you're in those one-on-one duel fights, and I know that sounds ironic because we're talking about co-op right now, but it does. When you are in that duel state, when you're fighting crownless, where you're able to get the parries over and over again, where you're feeling like a master of combat, it's good. It's really good. Just throwing other people in there kind of muddies that experience and you lose that a little bit. So I'd like to see them find a way that there can be co-op that still enables that kind of play. Now, I don't want something hyper strict or hyper competitive. Like, for example, in Destiny, it would get extremely painful for some of the raids in Destiny where there was zero margin for error on some of the mechanics. And I know some raid nights that I might be speaking to a small fraction of you, but I know some of you have experienced Destiny raid nights where you're hoping to get through it in an hour or two, and all of a sudden 6 hours later, because somebody doesn't know how the run works, you're still banging your head against the wall except this against the second encounter. I know we've all been there for different times for different bosses. Look, I'm not going back to Destiny, but that's the example that I wanted to bring up. And I'm saying I don't want that with Wuthering Waves. If they do decide to incorporate some degree of co-op, I want them to do it in a way that makes it so there's more complex mechanics, but it's not hyper specific or hyper punishing, because then it starts to not become fun from the co-op perspective again in that case. So let me know what you guys think about some of those ideas and what you think about the combat below. How has your co-op experience been? I know I got co-op a little bit earlier than some because I've been grinding pretty aggressively, but by now people should have been just starting to get into co-op. So I'd be interested to hear your experience about that in the comments down below. If you made it this far in the video, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate you and your time coming in. Listen to me yap a little bit while we got a little bit of Wuthering Waves in the background. Guys, I have been absolutely loving this game. Make sure to check out some of the other videos on the channel, or to come and see me live on twitch.tv/ConnorsThoughts for future streams and for future content. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.